You'll have 5 minutes to speak. Please address the select board as a whole, and no personal attacks are allowed. Once we hear from everyone who wants to speak in the room, we will check and see if we have anyone joining us by Zoom who would like to speak. So please go ahead.
Hello, I'm Lynn Bohai from Wilder. Many of you know I'm the co-chair of the Charter Commission, and we were on the agenda tonight until we weren't. I was hoping the new town manager would be here so I could welcome him to town and to say, you know, there's a part of me that wants to talk to him tomorrow about the charter, but then it's about maybe an inch big. And there's the rest of me that wants to say, okay, let me back up for a second. When I heard that we were going to be meeting, the Charter Commission was going to be meeting with you, I let the rest of the group know, and then I let the rest of the group know when we weren't going to be meeting. And part of the message I sent was, but I'm an optimist. And I'm hoping that our being shoveled off means that we will be able to discuss it with the new town manager. And that makes me happy. So thank you for allowing me to continue to be an optimist. And if our new town manager is listening or is somewhere, welcome. And yes, there's the little teeny part of me that wants to meet with him tomorrow. And there's the other part, the much, much bigger part that says, okay, he's got to get to know the town. He's got to get to know the staff. He's got to get to know much more than he probably currently does. I looked up that Pittsford goes by the Green Books and doesn't have a charter. So the charter will be brand new and needs to be looked at. The current one and what we're proposing. So we'll go ahead.
Thanks, Lynn. Yeah, we're very excited to welcome the town manager. He's going to get up to speed on everything. The charter, we hope to have a really solid onboarding. And we plan to bring up the charter most likely next week as well. So we'll be in touch. Any other public comments?
My name is Aaron Warner. I'm in the town of Hartford. And I'm here today just because I'm curious about, there's a committee that was recently started. I'm not sure if it's active or not, but it's the HCOREI committee. Is that an active committee?
That is an active committee.
And that stands for the Hartford Committee on Racial Equity and Inclusion. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Is that the Hartford version of the DEI committee? Is that what that would be?
I don't know. I think I'd have to know what you mean by DEI committee.
DEI committees, they're all over the place. Colleges, towns, it stands for diversity, equity, and inclusion.
I know. I mean, I think there's a lot of flavors of them. So I don't quite know if we do that. We know that the committee, is interested in issues like that. Brings us proposals
Well, the reason why I ask is there's lawsuits against these committees rising up all around the country, California, Texas, where it's actually having the exact opposite effect of what it apparently is intended to, which is to foster diversity, equity, and inclusion, and racial harmony. Lots of articles out there. There was a guy who was interviewed on the Joan Stossel show. This was a black man who left his DEI committee because it wasn't what he believed it to be. And so concerned that the town of Hartford might be locking themselves into a potential problem here for lack of knowledge about this. Are you guys aware of this? This is happening?
I believe the committee's been around for 5 years or so, 7 years. I haven't heard anything that would make us, ponder the legality of it. It's a committee that's created, the select board under our authority.
Okay, so 5 to 7 years and it's been going just fine. Well,
It's still going. It's still getting new applicants. It's still interacting with the select board. So I think it's, it's doing what it was intended to do as a committee.
And what is that exactly?
Well, it has a charter and a charge, and the people here would certainly answer that more than I can. The committee predates my tenure on the board.
I mean, I can speak to that.
Yeah,
sure, as one of the liaisons, Mr. Warner. So the committee was constituted particularly it was a community initiated committee as well. So there's a long history about how it came into being, what it was responding to. And, you know, very much in line with forwarding, Hartford has a strategic plan for equity and inclusion. So that's one of the main goals of the committee, is to be able to take those recommendations and help forward it, in addition to helping promote multicultural events in town, making policy recommendations to the town, to make sure that we have an equitable, thriving community.
Okay, and by equitable, what do we mean?
I mean, I would say that, you know, equity, the idea that every person in our community has a right to be able to thrive and get the support that they need through various resources. And so if we're taking.
Was there a problem with that? People not getting their resource needs met?
Yeah, I mean, there's, and this is in our strategic plan for equity and inclusion, which does have, granted, you know, this was done several years ago, but it does have some data speaking to the concern of the time. There were lots of focus group interviews where people were speaking directly to how they were experiencing, they might be experiencing racism in the community, they might be experiencing other inequities as well beyond just related to race. So, you know, I think we do have a very supportive, welcoming community in a lot of senses. And then we're also hearing from folks that we have room to grow too.
Right, so the term racism, I'm curious, just a second, Rocket. So the term racism, I'm curious to know, because I've looked into the philosophy behind these types of committees. And one of the philosophy teachings is that white people are the only people that can be racist. There can be no racism towards white people. Is this something that you agree with? Is this something that's believed?
So this is public comment. It's more like if you have things you want to say about the HCOREI committee, you can. It's not so much like a back and forth, you know, put us on the spot kind of thing.
Because I'm concerned that
I would recommend you go to one of their meetings if you'd like to find out more, or read the strategic plan, or look at their charts. Those are all ways. And if you want to come in and say, I don't think this committee is a good idea, and tell us why, that's great, and we'll consider that.
Yeah.
Rocket?
Aaron, I appreciate your comment. I think the chair is right that probably should be less of a back and forth, but I would just add my 2 cents, which is that I've repeatedly sort of raised my concerns of being overly narrow in the way that we try to find solutions in our community. And I also think that we should be mindful that sometimes even the best of intentions could have unintended consequence. So that, I think what Ali says, that there are other inequities beyond race that should be considered in our community, I think that's very crucial. I have advocated for expanding the scope of HCOREI to be beyond race and to be more broadly about equity so that it can serve constituents in town without that singular dimension. I will say that this has been an ongoing conversation. We did have a joint school and select board meeting about this, what was it, 3 months ago, maybe?
Less than that, I think.
And earlier this summer. And then I know that there's going to be a revisiting of all of that. And I have long held the position that it should be HCOREI, you know, just getting rid of the R. I don't know that we should focus narrowly on racial equity, because I think that committee is doing a lot of great things, like pushing us to develop a policy on policy and different procedures regarding committees. And to me, that's about just having an equitable process in town, which would be one that is fair to all people and providing support in proportion to need. And I think that has nothing to do with race. So I'm a little confused by that personally. And I would love to see that the scope of our concern and care try to solve more holistically.
I 100% agree. I think just my final comment is I come from a very multicultural community in South of Portland, Oregon. My best friend was Black. Orlando, growing up, most everybody that came to my birthday parties were not white. But I've noticed racial tension in this country has gotten worse. Studies show that it's getting worse, and it seems to be tied to some of this hyper focus on some of this stuff that these committees seem to be focused on. And my concern is that I'm thankful to hear that nothing bad has happened with the HCOREI committee in the town of Hartford. My concern is that bad things are happening with these all over the country, and I just want to make you guys aware of that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Additional public comment? Okay, we'll go to Zoom comment.
Okay, Marcy Bartlett, I see your hand is raised. You can unmute and share your comment.
Hi, this is Marcy Bartlett. I live in Wilder, and I read the article today. Actually, I read it last night as I was falling asleep, decided to read the Valley News online and promptly printed the article. Yes, we are glad that we have a new town manager. Want to welcome him. I don't know if he is attending via Zoom. Is that no? Yes?
I believe he's traveling this evening.
Okay.
I imagine he'll watch the recording of this. I know he's very excited to be coming here and get out and meet everyone in the community. So
And Mike, I wanted to read this one sentence. During his tenure, Haverstock said he helped secure grants to fund water and sewer infrastructure upgrades. And I want to know who gave him the Cliff Notes. This is, tell him, I hope to have many a good time talking.
yeah.
About water.
About
Water. We don't want much. We just want water.
About water.
And thank you for all your work. And I know I saw Gabrielle pulling in and the committee, everyone who worked so hard. I'm very excited and trust that he can jumpstart this infrastructure matter and help get us some funding so that we aren't squeezing the taxpayers too badly when it comes time to paying for it.
Thank you very much, Marcy.
Thank you.
Any other comment on Zoom?
No additional hands raised.
Okay, so we will move to select board comments and announcements. We'll start with Lanny, if you'd like.
I have nothing of grave interest.
Rocket?
I think I'm good as well. It's an honor to serve this town. Thanks.
Okay, breezing right through this, Alex.
Oh, I mean, it's already been said, but I
Yeah.
also want to welcome our new town manager, John Haverstock, and also re-thank, there are not enough thanks to thank that town manager search committee. I know some members are here. Thank you. And to also, of course, thank Gail and Paula for their steadfast leadership, getting us through to this point, and just looking forward to the future ahead.
Great, Mary?
Yes, I'd like to reiterate what Ally said. Thank you, Gail. Thank you, Paula. I also had a unique experience that, we all end up having at some point, I think. And I was just pleasantly surprised. An elderly friend of mine at the village here in White River Junction contacted me on Sunday night, and her husband had passed away in his rocking chair. And I went over there and spent time with her. And one of the nicest experiences was how professional the police were in dealing with her kind of being in shock, and also being just cordial and knowing that it just throws people off. And so I was just very impressed and want to thank them for the work and the service that they do.
Thank you, Mary. Dan, anything?
Yes.
Yes, I just want to again echo what has been said. I want to thank Gail and Paula, who have stood by town and gotten us through this tough period, and we're on board until we hired a permanent town manager. So I want to be sure that we give kudos to them, and also very excited that we have a new town manager. I know the transition between Gail and Paula to the new town manager will be fantastic. They're dedicated employees, and I want to thank them for all they've done over this time. A lot of it was behind the scenes that the public didn't really see. So thank you, Paula. Thank you, Gail, and congratulations to our new town manager.
Thank you, Dan. Kim?
I'll just echo the chamber. But yeah, thanks to everyone. That's all.
Thanks, Kim. I would just like to say, yes, it's no secret. We have appointed, we found our new town manager, John Haverstock, comes to us from Pittsford, Vermont. He'll be starting on October 2nd. So we expect that he'll, get out in the community and meet everyone. And we want to thank the search committee for providing us with such high quality candidates. It wasn't necessarily easy to choose between the finalists. We think we made a great choice in John, but we really appreciate sort of just the caliber of candidates that you sent us. And I really do have to thank Gail and Paula. I don't think we can really express like how deep our gratitude is.
We might just give Gail a round of applause.
Yeah. Okay, well, I'm going to finish. Gail, I really do want to thank you. If you look back to where we were last fall, it was in a state of turmoil. Since then, with your help and with Paula, we were able to get to the place we are today, right? We made excellent hires, a police chief, public works director, assessor. and now a town manager. And we were able to do that because of you and because of Paula and because of the department heads and the staff who came together, as Gail sometimes says, as Team Hartford, and everyone worked together collaboratively, and they showed themselves to be some of the finest municipal employees in the entire state. So we are incredibly lucky that was able to happen. I'm glad we're in the place we're in. I look forward to working with the town manager and continuing to work with my colleagues because it has been quite a whirlwind, and I think we're finally at the place we want to be. So thank you.
And now, I'm sorry, Mike, I totally cut you off that beautiful. I apologize.
All right, so we're moving to the appointment of Susan Mullens to the Hartford Committee on Racial Equity and Inclusion for a 2-year term beginning August 22nd, 2023, ending August 21st, 2025. So if Susan is here, please come on up to the microphone.
I am Susan Mullens. I live in Hartford, north of Wilder, between Wilder and Norwich, which is always kind of, my mailing address is White River, but I just normally say Hartford.
Great. If you want to tell us your interest in serving on HCOREI, that would be great.
In thinking about it, probably overall, one of my early interests was thinking that a community is better when there's a variety of voices that are able to be heard. And that can be in your family, that can be in your school, that can be in your town, your business. If we're all of one very narrow mind, we're going to miss out on a lot of good ideas, of histories, of emotions. And so that's one of my main reasons. I also think it can be hard to move to Vermont, whether you're a person of color or anybody. We are northern New England. We're not some little small village, but there are times that you feel like, oh, everybody knows each other. Everybody knows what's going on. I'm the outsider. I don't really have a voice here. And I know people do have a voice. We're not a little town. We have a lot of good ideas here, but that kind of thing adds to it when people maybe feel like they're not really a part of what's happening. So those are mine. I don't come with an agenda per se, other than a very broad one. And I know that there have been some issues in the past. I've only lived here now 7 years. I used to live in the Upper Valley, moved away, now 7 years here, where individuals did not feel supported. And I haven't heard of that in a while, but my ear is not to the ground necessarily.
Okay. Are there any questions for Susan? Lynn?
Yeah, Susan's already been through the question and answer process by HCOREI, so she's obviously here because of that. But I do have a question, Susan. What do you see as one area within Hartford that could stand to be examined in terms of diversity?
I think I don't know yet. As I said, I haven't heard of any negative things that are happening. So I'm kind of here to learn, and but I can't say here's an area that I think we need to really, really focus on. I think race is an important one. There are other concerns as well. People that may not be as integrated into our community as they could be.
So there's no area that you would like to see HCOREI strive to work for more inclusion within the town of Hartford?
No single one,
okay.
No.
Thank you.
Now I may, a year from now, you could ask me that question. I may have a different answer, but right now.
Okay, thank you.
Say no.
Any other questions for Susan? Yeah, I'll take a motion.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I move that we appoint Susan Mullens to the Hartford Committee on Racial Equity and Inclusion, HCOREI, for a 2-year term beginning August 22nd, 2023, and ending August 21st, 2025.
I have a second.
We have a second for Brockett. Any discussion?
Good luck.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
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 Okay, and Dan's got the thumbs up. So it was unanimous. Thank you very much, Susan.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
So now we've got the town manager's significant activity report. Gail?
All right, I will go over a few highlights, and then if you have any questions, you'll notice in the packet, there was the follow-up from the board meeting on August 8th, regarding the parking meters, South Main parking lot, maintenance of the planters downtown,
Secretary.
the fence installation at the Wilder Park and Ride, solid waste hours and staff interaction, about the call volume for the HPD, also on Christian Street, and scheduling another traffic study, and then website questions. So all of those items were answered, with the exception of the two for HPD, and that was scheduling of staff. They were just between vacations and trainings. They'll provide an update after at the next meeting. And then there were a few questions that came up from Kim regarding those, regarding the significant activities report. So South Main Street parking lot and construction, remind everybody there is a meeting here tomorrow night at 6 p.m. that's going to be going over the South Main Street municipal parking lot and what will be happening with that. So I recommend if you have questions to go ahead and attend that, and you'll get all of the information that you need regarding how everybody's going to be contacted, what the timeline is. I did speak with Matt Osborne from planning. He also indicated that they went door to door today to everybody down in that area, as well as sending an email to all of the TIF contacts. And again, he did recommend that everybody, if you have questions, come to this tomorrow night. Question about a diversity and equity training that all of the department heads attended. There was a presenter that came a couple weeks ago that did a training with all of us, and there is a PowerPoint that was provided that I believe if anybody would like a copy of it, we certainly could provide a copy. Town clerk, there was a question about researching for land records, and Lisa, the town clerk, responded based on speaking with the town clerks across the state. Excuse me, I'm sorry. Looking for an online platform was part of it. And the question was, did we reach out to Civic Plus? And Lisa did reach out to them. And as of the end of today, we still had not heard anything back. So if we hear something, we'll let you know. There was a question about the wastewater facility, Waba Queechee facility not having their biannual proactive maintenance cleaning done. That was a typo. They were done. So errors and omissions, there was a question whether or not board members should exclude themselves if they're having conversations regarding certain situations that have to do with property owners, and they most certainly should recuse themselves from that conversation. As far as Gates and Fairview Terrace, we have two consultants that will be here this evening to give an update on that. And then the last question was about a manifest question for trees and planters that are being paid for out of the TIF fund. So that's kind of it, speed dating nutshell. Does anybody have any questions on items?
Thank you for that, Gail.
The DEI training that was done for staff, refresh my memory. Is that something that had been asked for by the select board, by HCOREI? How did that come about?
I don't have the exact reasoning behind it. I know that it was scheduled several months ago, and it was a mandatory training, and anybody
We have no sound. Can you guys hear us?
I can hear you, Kim, but I can't hear anything at town hall.
Other questions for Gail? Okay.
Just
Oh,
For
Jen?
the record, sorry, both Dan and I, like everything that Gail just said after Laney's questions, we didn't hear. So if there's any way you could just briefly recap that again, because now we can hear you again.
Sure. Lanny had asked about the training and where it came from and who was paying for it. And so I was explaining that as the board is having training, which Ally so eloquently explained, part of the strategic plan, it's also for leadership to also have training as well. And it's being paid for from the town manager's budget.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Okay. All right, so we will move on to our agenda item, State of Vermont reappraisal order. Do we have the assessor joining us?
We do. We have Rick Vincent.
Thank you,
Yes.
and good evening. So I'll try to be as brief as possible on this. I won't bore you with all the details and take a lot of your time. So I'll start with some recent legislation, and some of you might be familiar with H480, which changed some of the requirements, some of the standards for reappraising. One of those changes was to rely on the coefficient of dispersion, which is an average deviation from the average common level of appraisal. So it gets a little technical, so I won't get into the details on that. But one of the changes was that the trigger for reappraisal is the COD, the coefficient of dispersion. Generally, and this is per International Assessing Association standards, the standard for a coefficient of dispersion is 20% or 20 or less. We are now, per the 2022 ratio study, our COD is 20.15 or 20.23, something like that. So we're just over that standard, that bar. So because of that, the state of Vermont issued this reappraisal order. We were scheduled to do a reappraisal in 2025 anyway, so this doesn't really change anything. But we got the order, and as you probably see, the chair of the select board has to sign that order and we send it back. So we were working on, even before I started here, we're just starting to work on the reappraisal, start getting things organized. That was put on hold while this H480 was working its way through the pipeline. Now that that's concluded and we got this reappraisal order, I've started that process again. So I'll be putting together a request for proposal sometime in the next few weeks and sending that out and getting proposals from, hopefully, from some appraisal firms to do this reappraisal in 2025.
Any questions for Rick on this? Mary?
I had a question. When I was reading the material about the COD and it talked about a median ratio, I understand what a median is, but what is this median ratio? Is it for the town or is it for the state?
Which median ratio?
Well, when they were talking about how you arrive at the COD,
Yep.
And they talked about a median ratio, I'm trying to find
Okay.
it.
Yep. So the median ratio is the average ratio for sold properties in the town.
Okay. It is
So
specific to the
right
town.
now, as of 2022, the ratio was 77.15%. So that means on average, the assessed value of a sold property is 77.15% of the sale price.
Okay.
And then the COD is the variation, the deviation from that 77%.
Right.
So at 20, the average would be 57% or 97%.
Okay.
Lynn?
Do we have a current coefficient of dispersion in place that we're working off of?
Well, the current coefficient of dispersion for Hartford is at 20.15 or 20.23%.
20.28 8 is in the
Yeah.
packet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
22, okay, and that's what taxes are based off of? Use that for,
No. No, it's just a
Well,
measure of the
values,
equity of
value.
our assessments.
right, assessments, which in turn is taxes, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Right, and, and we're hoping to get a new COD when we're finished with the assessments that are
Correct.
take place.
Yes.
There.
Any more questions? Otherwise, I'll take a motion, Rock.
Just for clarification, at the point of reassessment, or technically our COD would be at 0%. Is that correct?
No,
No,
no, it should be lower than 20 and hopefully significantly lower than 20, but it'll never be 0 because not every property is going to sell for exactly the same
Right.
percentage.
Because it's an assessment.
Right.
Right, but it would be close to 0.
It would
If it's-
probably be somewhere between 5 and 10.
Oh, I see.
It's very difficult in a small community to get a very low number on that.
Yeah.
So for a more rural community, the standard is 20 or less, as I mentioned earlier. For a larger community where there are many more sales and you can analyze and tighten things up more.
Yeah.
On the analysis, on a sales analysis for a revaluation, they expect 15 or lower, but you can't expect 0.
Oh, I'm sorry. Is it maybe the CLA that I'm looking for? That would be,
Well, the CLA would be closer to 100%,
right.
Yeah.
Okay.
100% of market value.
And that's sort of where the equity aligns, basically.
Right.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Lynn?
yeah, Gail and or Rick, is there a way possibly that you could put together some sort of a list of terms and the formulas together so that we can be better informed about this? Because this is a very, it's a topic that has a lot of detail to it. And
Right.
you're used to working with that stuff all the time. But is there a way for you to put together some sort of a packet that defines what the terms actually mean and how they're derived? Is that possible to?
I imagine the tax department has something.
Is that something that?
Are you looking
that
for like a
finance-
glossary?
I'm
Are
sorry?
you looking for like a glossary?
Like a glossary of what the terms actually mean, and also the how they were arrived at as far as the formulas for the terms. That'd be interesting to know how that works.
I could probably put something together, but there is a glossary that I used to have. It disappeared. I don't know where it went, but it's about that thick. That's how many different.
I mean, something
Terms we
in
have
PDF form would be nice. I just,
There's stuff in the
Yeah.
packet.
There's,
that-
if you, Lanny, on
that
page
explains it.
34 through, I think it's like 34 and 35 of the packet, and it's links to tax.vermont.gov. So it has definitions for education grand list, equalized education grand
No.
list, common level of appraisal, and.
yeah, I understand that. It'd just be nice to have something in a packet that we could just print out and have on our own computers to
I'm pretty
reference.
sure the tax department has that, so it's a place to
I
start.
mean, I noticed that, but like I said, it'd be nice to have a packet that put together by the town. If
I
that's
don't think
possible.
we need to duplicate efforts if there's
Well, it's not
something
if
from
we
the
have
tax department that explains all of it. Heidi, did you have a comment on this or a question?
Heidi Dutoway for Junction, Vermont. Sir, I have a question for you. So is the reason for this appraisal because I'm actually looking at real estate right now? And the question I'm asking is, the reason for this appraisal is because houses are selling for like $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 above what they're on Beacon for. For right now, they were on, I don't know what you guys did this year as far as like going out and looking at the houses, but some houses are on Beacon for say 300 and something thousand, but they're actually selling for like 800.
Well,
Is that why there's such a discrepancy and why you have to do a reappraisal?
yeah, that's part of it. That's part of the reason. It's because the last revaluation was in 2017 and property values have changed significantly since then. I suspect that the ratio for 2023, which isn't finalized yet, the common level of appraisal, that'll be significantly lower than the 77% from 2022. So when we're in a crazy market like we are now, whether it's a very hot market and properties are increasing, or it's a bad market and values are decreasing, the values can spread out in different matters, different ways. different manners. And that causes the inequity. So yes, you have to do a revaluation at some point to bring everything back to market value and tighten up that coefficient of dispersion to tighten up on the equities.
I mean, there's houses in this town that have stayed at $54,000 consecutively for the last 3 years. I don't see any house in this town that looks very nice from the outside staying at $54,000 in this day and age.
Well, we don't change values annually. We only change the values during a revaluation, unless there's a physical change to the property. So we'll hold all the values at the 2017 values until the next revaluation. Then when we do the 2025 revaluation, we'll hold those values until the next revaluation.
I just find it very difficult to believe any house that looks very nice from the outside in 2023 is valued at $54,000 taxed upon.
Well, again, that's a 2017 value.
Okay, Mary, I just want to
Thank
remind
you for answering
everyone.
my question, sir.
Thanks, Heidi. I want to remind everyone the motion is whether I sign the reappraisal or the state sentence. Mary?
I was just going to say, and also my understanding is the state has decided that no matter what, from this point on, there's going to be a revaluation every 6 years.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
I'm ready to make a
Rock.
motion.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chair, I move that we authorize the chair to sign the state's reappraisal order.
I'll second the motion.
Second from Mary. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Okay, so unanimous. It looks like we got Rick for another item. This is the correction to the 2023 property value and grand list.
Correct.
And Mr. Chair, I'm going to recuse myself from that one.
Okay.
So a little background on this. We set the grand list back in June, I believe it was. After the setting of the grand list, we received a grievance application from the property owner on the subject property here. In discussions with the property owner and a subsequent inspection of the property, I discovered that there were a couple of errors that we made in the valuation of the property. So one is there was a new garage with 2 apartments built above the garage, so new structure on the property. So I went out and inspected that property with the property owner. During that inspection, I realized, or after that inspection, I realized that I had failed to delete the old garage that was on that property from the property card. So there was a valuation of the old garage and an attached shed still on the record card. So I had to delete that old garage and shed. And then I discovered that being new and not fully educated on the homestead exemption for Vermont, I realized that I did not include that building in the homestead exemption. I had to treat it as non-homestead, but because the apartments were not occupied, according to the state, that building would qualify for the homestead exemption. So we had to change that category. So there were those 2 corrections. While I was out at the property, there was a third item that I changed while I was out at the property. The owner was doing some repairs to the siding on the main house. There was a lot of rot on the siding. So I took the liberty to correct that at the same time. Something I didn't have to do because it wasn't part of the errors and omissions, but it was something that I should rightfully do because I noted it and I was making a change to the value anyway. So as a result of those changes, the value was reduced from 329 to 301,500.
Questions? Any?
I'm ready to make a motion.
Anyone have any questions? And then we'll make a motion. Okay, go ahead, Lenny.
Make a motion to approve the errors and omissions correction to the property located at 186 Hillcrest Terrace, map ID 45/28, span number 10213 and 2023 grand list.
I'll second the motion.
A second from Mary. Any discussion? Okay, and Kim's going to recuse on this one. So all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, next we've got the purchase of 2 electric mowers. Scott, are you up?
Scott Hauser. Scott. Next contestant on the first.
Good evening. We are here more of a formality to the process. You folks approved the authorized us to purchase 2 electric commercial grade mowers through the ARPA funding. We went through the process of evaluating mowers on the market, and I believe last time when we did talk about this, we talked about certain brands that are capable of doing the type of work that we do. So we are here to share with you and authorize this purchase through the purchasing policy, utilizing the Sourcewell Joint Powers purchasing process, and purchasing 2 Toro Z Master mowers. You allocated $72,000 for this. The 2 zero-turn mowers that we chose came about $851.60 more than those 2 items, but we also had a surplus in the line item of ARPA funds when we purchased the skid steer. So we requested use of the funding in order to do that. So here to answer any questions you have. Otherwise, we need your authorization to move forward with the RFP.
Lynn?
Yeah, I was not in support of these mowers. I thought they were too costly and I voted against them. As I'm not going to vote for the RFP tonight, but I think it's too costly for what we're getting. But my question is, how are we going to track, or how are you going to track the usage and efficiency of these mowers compared to gas mowers? Because Dana did a great job of selling electric mowers to the board, but I'm not sold on the fact of them putting out the kind of power and efficiency that he stated. So is there a method that you're planning on using to track how well they stand up against a gas mower?
You know, this is all new to the market for us. I mean, you can go down to Home Depot and purchase a electric ride-on mower, residential, grade type of mower. We're not talking about this. These are pretty sophisticated pieces of equipment that have had hours and hours and hours of research and study on before they became available to municipalities, other government agencies. So I'm not sure how we're going to go about doing it, other than we will monitor it as best we can related to the amount of hours we are able to use one unit based on our mowing schedules. There's so many varieties in how we maintain our facilities that it's going to be hard to track until we get 3 or 4 years under our belt. This year with all the rain, we're mowing all the time. So our consumption of fuel is much more than we've had to spend in previous years. So it'll be interesting to monitor how well they function and operate, but we feel pretty confident based on what Toro has provided us. The company itself is one of the top commercial manufacturers of golf course as well as park related type of mowing units, and they said this is all they're going to be selling in a few years.
You're getting how many batteries with this?
Well, each unit has its own battery units that recharge at the end of the day. So about eight hours of service per battery. So they'll plug in at the end of the day.
So be interesting to see.
We do have an electric Zamboni. So
that's not anywhere near the time element involved as a mower would be.
Any other questions for Scott? No. Mary?
I'm ready to make motion.
Okay.
I I move that the select board authorize the town manager to sign for and purchase the Toro Z master mowers through the Sourcewell contract as identified in the attached documents and invoice for $72,851.60.
I'll second.
And the second from Ally. Any discussion?
Yeah, I just want to say, I mean, these do seem extremely expensive, but I think the angle of my support on this is that I think, we've got to just try to find new things and push forward into the future. And the other thing is that there's a huge cost and externality to all the gas that gets burned, both for the health of the person who's mowing and sitting there with the fumes all day, and to the kids and the people at the park and the people who are around them. So part of my support for this, it seems extremely expensive, but it does, my support in expending town funds comes from keeping in mind a public health perspective as well. So thank you for your research.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. So all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Nay, yeah, sorry.
6-1. Okay, good. Thanks, Scott.
Thank you.
Thank you, Scott.
All right, Gate Street and Fairview Terrace retaining walls engineering.
Do you mind if I move over here so they can
Yeah,
assume all of this space?
Kim has her hand raised. Kim, did you have a comment on something that we just talked about, or?
No, but what we're about to talk about. So it doesn't look like we're taking any action tonight. But I did want to just disclose to the board that one of my business's employees does reside at 24 Maplewood Terrace. So I don't think there's any real conflict of interest, particularly because that option. Anyway, I just want to make sure that's out there. And if anyone wants me to not participate in this conversation for that reason, just let me know.
Yeah. Who wants to kick it off? Chris.
I'll be the
We'll
lucky
let Chris
guy.
kick it off. All right.
All right, I will ask Gail in a minute here to start sharing the documents for the public that you received and are posted on the website. So today's update meeting, you're not going to make a motion, but we're looking for you to agree and occur with a decision to be made here. And one thing I want to start off with is a reminder that this engineering venture that has been undertaken was directed by previous board members. The layout of one-way traffic and a sidewalk and so forth was previously decided upon, voted upon, and that was the directive of the RFP that was released. So if there's a discussion by public or board to move away from that decision, it affects services that are being performed. Okay. All right. So with me today, we have Chris Lathrop of Du Bois & King, and we have Jacob Wimet of Geo Design. So what we did, the previous engineering study on this is we moved forward with basically a stone stabilized slope and a precast concrete wall options. And then they were going to cost analyze those options and try to direct us in the right direction. That was an old, I won't call it outdated study. We've collected a lot more data, a lot more borings on it. And Jacob has identified some issues with the previous report and some of the assumptions that we were making, which caused us to pause, regroup staff and the engineers. And we looked at what other options were out there, not far off from those options that were decided upon previously, but had potential. These include reinforced soil slope, and included crest walls, included toe walls. Toe walls could have been precast concrete blocks, which are in here, and could be, we added in sheet pilings, which you're all familiar with. The village has sheet pilings. Then we studied in here their location. You know, you have options of putting walls at the top of the slope, options at the bottom of the slope. I'm sure you've all read the report. So when we discuss in the report here, when we get into it, viability, we have to think about constructability. So part of that is, driving sheet pylons at the top of the hill was not realistic. There's main power lines that would have to be relocated to the side of the road with the houses. Some of the options up there, including crest walls, you would have to cut the slope back so far to reconstruct the wall up there that you would be moving the road over into the front yard that is mostly sloping up towards the houses. So you'd be taking up their front yards, creating a temporary road to maintain access. That would also include a lot of utility relocation that is not technically necessary through all the options. Then at the bottom of the wall, looking at those options, the stone slope, where does it end up? We have a much more accurate survey than previous. So we now know that the stone slope, to do it properly, will end up in the parking lot of the Bugby Senior Center. So that's problematic. Then we looked at the steel pylons near the residences. They would potentially cause damage, or most likely would cause damage to those residences. Not so much at the Bugby Center would be safe, but when you get towards the older houses, the safety factors weren't met. So I'm going to let them discuss a lot more detail with me. I'm just giving the layman view. So what we do is we break out the wall at the top of Fairview Terrace, which is wall 1A. And then we have the wall that is along Gate Street as 1B. I got that right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So we present you options in there for 1A and 1B.
Mm-hmm.
The wall that is on the uphill side, a little important thing to remember, the wall on the uphill side of Gate Street isn't in here. Jacob's performed calculations, and we're going to stabilize that by lifting up the road slightly. A little extra fill against that wall actually increases its safety factor and brings its stability into play. So through here, the biggest things to avoid going detail by detail, I'll let them do detail by detail, is that the steel pylon wall at the bottom of the slope near 24 Maplewood Terrace and so forth is not viable. Okay, it's also not viable to put it on the top. The most viable option right there, without tearing down 24 Maplewood Terrace, is a precast block wall there. It's a much more residential look, appealing to be located there. It does have quite a bit of impact on that property for construction wise, but it's the least impact of the options. Okay.
Sorry, Chris, is there a map you could pull up so that people can
Yeah.
see?
So, yeah, you just scroll down. and
Yeah,
stuff.
but can you pull it up so that people
So
at home
if you
can see?
Mr. Chair, point of clarification. Are we just reviewing the options, or are we actually making a decision tonight?
We don't have a recommended motion, but we need to be brought up to date on what the options are, and if we can sort of start thinking about
Okay.
if we can give direction.
So
I think that would be-
one thing that I would request, Chris, and of all of you, is just as you give these recommendations, obviously keeping in mind that we're lay people, we've read this packet, but there's a ton of variables in here that I find very confusing to hold in my head going front ways and back ways, right? So I understand that you're giving us the key considerations, which are great. And then if we could also be really clear about what you think the actual best solutions are. I'm
going to give you DPW's perspective of what the best scenario
He's getting there.
No, I know, but I first wanted this point of clarification if we're actually making a decision or just getting information.
I'm telling you the direction we're leaning to, and I
Okay.
want to hear some positive feedback.
Okay, and so you could repeat that again, that's the stone slope with the concrete retaining wall or concrete crest?
So when we look at, so if you scroll down a little bit more, Gail.
On this same one.
Yeah,
I just wanted people at home to be able to see this, that's all.
That's fine. So
It's also on page 59 of the agenda, which is on the website.
that's a little blurry on
Okay.
that version, but 24, obviously you can see it, and you can see the cross section B, which is going through 24 right there.
Mhm.
So if you scroll down a little bit more to the next sheet, and we'll go right through the next two sheets. This is where it goes by 24 Maplewood. That is skewed. That cross section where it hits that building, it looks pretty far away from that building. If that cross section is moved another 5 feet, you'll see the back porch enter to that cross section, which will be much closer to the house. So if you can go up a little bit more, maybe they can see the inset a little better. Down, I guess, would be the right word. Yeah. All right, so basically, yeah, so it's not that much better, but what you're looking at there's a precast concrete block wall, which would give you the stone face down by the residence. And then behind it, going up to Gate Street would be a stone slope. And when I say stone slope, don't think you're going to look at stone. It'll be like the new VA bridge where it's actually planted. It would be infilled and planted. So it'd look like a grass slope. At the top, we would have the pedestrian traffic guardrail. We'd have a sidewalk and a one-way street built up against the wall of Gate Street. So that's where we're leaning to for a direction versus trying to acquire, reduce the housing stock. It's a burden on a young family. It's a duplex. It'd be a loss of housing. It'd be a lot of details to work out as far as where they would park during construction, how they would be protected during construction, a lot of things that to be taken into account there. But this, after the construction was over, this option would be the least visually intrusive and the least impact physically on the property.
So Chris, which option is this? Like on the page 57, there's the probable cost summary. Is that encompassed in one of these? Particular plans?
So that is 1B, and that is a precast concrete slope wall, toe wall, which is misspelled on number 4.
So that's the option you think would be least intrusive?
Yes.
The least visual impact?
Right.
Okay.
The only other viable option there is to physically tear the house down and do a stone slope. That's not a viable option in our mind.
Okay. Kim has her hand up.
Yeah, Chris, is this option just taking place within an easement, or does there need to be any transfer of property for this at all for the 24 Maple?
So there would be 2 ways of going about it. We could do a construction easement and a physical easement for the wall, or we could purchase the land underneath at least the wall. There could be zoning issues with minimum lot sizes and so forth with that, but there will need to at least be easements.
Okay, but that part's to be determined still.
Yeah, there's we keep scrolling through. There is a plan that shows the rough required easements right here. Might be a little bit difficult to see, but of course that is the absolutely bare bone minimum required. We would still need access to the driveway through in front of 24. We would still need a staging area. We'd probably have to negotiate with landowners to do temporary staging areas and access through the back lots there. Because this be very hard to do it all from the uphill side and keep a tight zone at the bottom.
Chris, what's the finished road width to include the sidewalk on this one here?
It's a 16-foot wide lane. So if crunch came to crunch and 2 cars were going up and down against each other, they would be able to physically sneak by.
16-foot lanes.
One 16-foot lane.
The finished grade slope there, is that a 45 I'm looking at, or what is that actual slope?
1 on 1.5.
1 on 1.5. Okay. Right.
Gail, are you on the master there?
I am, yes.
If we can get to page 57, just the list of options here.
Yeah.
What you're proposing basically is option number 4, is that correct?
So that is after further review, DPW did the more decorative cross sections for visual for you.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say at the end of tonight, it's probably gonna be more like option 6 is what DPW is gonna recommend, which is gonna be a stone slope and sheet pile wall behind.
Where is option 6?
Yeah, I don't see option.
Yeah, it doesn't
It doesn't
exist.
exist right now.
So a new option, okay.
Yeah, so we did further review after this, and if we go, I'm getting there, okay? We've gotten through one part, right? So now let's go back up to
Well,
cross section.
I'm finding myself getting a little lost in the weeds. So I would just love to know, first off, it seems like options 1 through 3 are the ones where we have to basically acquire the house, right?
They're all gonna require some type of
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, the project requires, no matter what you do, easements,
Okay, at
construction
least
and
an
temporary.
easement, but if not outright acquisition, right?
It depends on how the town wants to deal with that. The slopes are going to go down into the back logs regardless of if you do a slope or if you do either wall type at the bottom.
Right, so I guess I find myself in the position of not being, because I'm not an engineer, I'm trusting all of you and your engineering expertise. I'm finding myself concerned firstly about the cost of the project. Obviously, fundamentally, that it's delivered with excellence, but then also what the costs of the project are and what those trade-offs and costs, why we would choose one cost versus another. So street width, grade degrees, these things, they're not going to mean that much to me, to be honest. I'm much more concerned about is the jump in $1 million from option 1 to option 4 justified because of safety concerns, because of what? So,
well, I would like, before we go over line by line.
Well, I don't think I want to do that, because I that's myself, and I'll let my
Well,
fellow
you're
members
leading
speak.
me down that road. So,
Well, I'm just confused.
We're on wall 1B. We're showing the effect on 24 Maple Street and the most realistic way to get there.
Mhm.
I've told you that sheet pilings are not viable there. That's also in the cost analysis in the notes. I've told you the crest wall's not viable there. That's also in the notes that you would have read. So I'm telling you, there is one viable option in front of 24 Maplewood, okay? Which is the precast concrete block toe wall with stone slope behind it. The negotiated price for an easement or increasing the width of our right of way, that's to be determined between legal and the property owners. Would we prefer the right of way width to be increased so we have the clear right to go there, make repairs and so forth anytime we wanted? Yes, but chances are we're also going to need an easement because they're going to give up the least amount, but it's a wall. You have to be able to access the bottom. So how far can you keep pushing the right of way out? There's zoning considerations. We don't have a final design to even know whether or not taking that amount of right of way would then hamper their duplex status and make them a non-conforming lot. The price of an easement versus the price to take the land, you're essentially taking the land. However, the easement will remain with their property and count as property for their density count. So if I'm a landowner, I'm going to want to give up an easement.
Mhm.
So, but that would be legal. That would be negotiations and see where that went.
So what I'm interpreting here is you say number 2 is out because that's sheet pile, number 5 is out because of crest wall. I'm confused. Is it just sort of a spelling aberration that toe, T-O-E and T-O-W are the same thing? It's spelled
It's just a
differently?
spell.
Okay. So then if we have option 1, 3, and 4 with stone slope and toe wall, I see that number 1 is limited toe wall, so I understand that, and number 3 and 4 precast. But then between number 3 and 4, I can't tell the difference between wall 1B in each of those options. Are they the same? Wall 1B?
So if you look at option 1, right, wall 1A, that is purely a stone slope in option number 1.
Which you said is out.
which we're recommending is out because it goes into the parking lot of the Bugby Center.
Right.
Okay. In option number 1B is a stone slope and limited toe wall. Okay. That is bringing the stone slope as far over into those properties and over towards 24 Maplewood as possible, and then converting to a toe wall. That is more intrusive into the properties. And it's not really viable because we all know that we're not going to give up the parking in the Bugby Center.
Is it clear that there's kind of two wall sections we're talking about here? It starts at the beginning above Bugby and it goes about 217 feet. That's what we're talking wall 1A, and we've shown like 4 options of what we can do or can't do there. And then we have wall 1B. And so in some of these cases, it's a combination. Like Chris said, the 1A, we have it shown where it's just stone and that's going too far. So we're saying that's not really viable. But we still show that in the chart as option
The homework
1, like 1A is stone. And then the 1B portion is a stone wall with limited toe slope. So it's the 2 wall sections that we're kind of showing different options to in this chart.
I think what might help is if you go down, or sorry, move forward 7 pages.
Yeah.
So right there.
Right here?
No, go up one more.
Right here?
Yep. So you can see there's on the left side, there's kind of like a reddish line with triangles and a purple line with triangles.
Right here.
That red line with triangles is the limited toe wall. So you're taking more property. The purple line with triangles is the taller toe wall. You're keeping the slope to the bottom of the slope where it is.
And that's wall section 1A.
Yeah.
So I guess my question on this, because you've told us sort of what's viable, what you don't recommend, right? Of the options that are on page 57, is 4 the one that you sort of think is what, or some version of 4 is the preference?
If we can go back to the 2 cross sections that we did to illustrate the next wall, the 1A, which is behind the Bugby Center. So if you go back up. All right.
This one?
Yeah. So this was, no, one more. All right. So this was the next explanatory decision. This one right here is behind the Bugby Center. And this is a sheet pylon. It's safe in this location. It doesn't endanger buildings. And you will notice in the inset B, it's easier to achieve a setback from the existing parking lot. The precast concrete block walls, as you make them taller, the engineering, the reinforcement of them just becomes more and more expensive, whereas there's a certain play to the sheet piling wall. It also gives us space to plant some sort of evergreen in front of it to shield it a little bit. If we go up one more, this is just a visualization of trying to maintain those same slopes from the top into a stone concrete block wall. And as you can see, to keep it more realistic on the cut and fills without going all the way back up the bank with the foundation cut, it pushes out closer to the parking. If we're really, doing our due diligence with cost and so forth. So the recommendation that DPW is kind of at is we want to just make sure everyone understands that up front, that our recommendation moving forward with finishing off the conceptual and the cost evaluating of the stuff that goes on top of these walls and in the ground behind them, as far as water, sewer, and so forth, is that we feel that the sheet pylon wall in the vicinity by the Bugby Center is appropriate. I know there's some history with those walls in the village and people not being happy with it. But we got the best of the best geos and structurals here. And they feel it's appropriate, and then transfer over to the concrete block wall behind the residences.
Chris, what's the lifespan of a sheet piling wall?
Yeah.
I don't have an answer off the top of my head. We can look it up, but you use different materials, whether it's temporary or permanent, to certainly.
It's going to be a permanent wall.
Oh, yeah.
The problem I see with metal walls, especially when you have earth behind them, is rot. And we want to make this a project that we don't have to revisit, that down the road, future generations don't have to revisit this project. I'm not sold on putting steel in a wall that's going to rot out. I mean, it doesn't seem very viable to me. I mean, it's steel used all over the place, and you can see where it's been rusted and rotted through. I mean, I know you guys have the engineering mindset behind you, but there's no guarantees on.
We're just providing options. And,
right.
you know, obviously that is one option that you pay for less now, but to your point, at some point, it may be.
Concrete stands up much, much longer than steel ever would. You got to look to the future.
So I understand that, you know, the reasons for the choices you've made, the way it looks and everything. I guess my just one question, because I'm not an engineer, and you guys are, is like, is there an option that you would recommend that's reflected like in the options of 5, or is it going to look different? I mean, if you tell us this is what we would recommend going forward, I think the board can be like, okay, what do you need from us to just give you that direction, right? Because I mean, we do have the 5 options with the different sort of configurations of wall 1 and wall A and wall B, and we have different costs. So when I look at these 5, I'm like, I don't know. What does DPW recommend?
So I mean,
and I know you mentioned maybe it's a different option that includes different things.
Yeah, I mean, if there is an absolute desire of no steel piling, I mean, it's going to last our lifetime, but I understand that's not always what we're looking for. Then it would be option number 4. And then I will say all walls need a certain amount of maintenance. I mean, we have a wall on South Main Street that we just spent a lot of money fixing. Like, nothing is forever. Concrete doesn't.
So if we said, hey, option 4 is what you recommend, you know, that sounds great to us. Like, what do you do next?
Well, that gives me the green light to tell them to finish the conceptual design so we can have the total bond amount ready to go.
Kim, is there anything?
Yeah, well, Chris just touched on my question, which is if at this point, are we on track to have things ready to go to bond and a bond vote in March?
Well, it's not, I'm not going to speak for them, but I mean, I don't see an issue with us having plans far enough along to generate the engineer's opinion of costs for the bond vote based on.
Having a tough time here because I can't see visualization of 4 or 5. What is the difference between option 4 and option 5 for another $200,000?
So option 5 is crest walls. That's placing the walls at the top of the slope, which we've ruled out.
So that's not an option.
These are the options that were studied,
Okay.
and option 5, we're saying it's not viable.
And all of these options were based on the same widths of roadway and sidewalk.
Yeah.
Okay. I know that decision's been made for one way, but it just seems foolish at this point. So why? But we're not going back there.
So I think from my perspective, at least, is that we've got a recommendation for an option from DPW. I feel like they're qualified and we can accept their recommendation so that they can take the next steps. I don't know if other people agree with me or what, but I would say let's give them sort of tacit approval to move forward doing what they need to do based on option 4.
Kim has her hand raised again.
Kim?
I'm sorry, I feel like Chris had started to talk about an option 6 that we hadn't seen. And so is there
Well,
potential?
Option 6 is only if you are willing to consider sheet piling over in the vicinity of the Bugby Senior Center, but that sounds like there are too many concerns about longevity of it.
Generally with sheet piling, what we would do is we would upsize the size of the sheet, accounting for a certain level of corrosion loss.
How thick are these sheets?
That would come out of final design. It's based on the force, like the forces on the wall and final design would give us the section thickness of the sheet. Based on how corrosive the soil is, we would add steel to that section, planning on, like the worst case scenario loss of steel.
Coming from a mechanical engineering background, I am not for steel in a wall like that. I cannot see the viability of that whatsoever.
So we have a recommendation of option 4 for DPW, right?
Sounds like I want 100% of out of you guys. So yeah.
I mean, if that's the recommendation, I think we can all get behind it, but I don't know how fruitful it is if we keep saying, well, what if we do this and what if we do that? I mean, I'm not an engineer. I just want to know what we should do.
Yeah, we've said in here that we don't find these other options viable, or so where I was getting at is 2, option 4, or a hybrid with the sheet pylon, which is why we have 2 different views for you to look at there of what you pick up with the sheet pylon. However, that gain of space, easier gain of space, is probably outweighed by some people's concerns about corrosion of the wall.
The other thing that concerns me about going with a precast wall blocks is that we have an issue with precast blocks down on South Main Street. What is to prevent something like what happened in South Main Street from happening with precast? I'm just wondering if there's a viability. Wait a minute before you answer. What the viability of poured in place walls are versus precast walls. If poured in place walls with rebar reinforcement, rebar and mesh could be put in place, are they more viable as far as for prone to shifting?
If I speak, don't tell me what I said wrong. But
I just know they're a lot more, they lock together in precast.
So I'm going to start with South Main Street. South Main Street are what they call T blocks. Okay, so they look like a T, and they go back into the ground. So when we rebuilt that, we found that the drainage behind it wasn't proper. So that's always a concern about drainage failing behind any wall, whether it's a poured concrete wall or a block wall. So that has things working against it. The engineering of the day back then, that thing will probably always move a little bit. The standards were just different. The programs they're running, what it appears we're looking at is the Ready Rock. Everyone knows about Ready Rocks. It's been around. Software's been developed that actually works with Ready Rock particularly now. It's much more heavily engineered. It's got the track record is much better. I personally don't know of any Ready Rock walls projects that I've been involved with that have failed. So everything has a lifespan. I took out a concrete retaining wall at my house that was poured. I mean, the rebar was rotted out and didn't even attach to the footer anymore. So those have a lifespan as well. As far as poured concrete wall, you obviously have to go down below frost. You have to make a massive footer. So Jacob's going to tell me probably much more accurately than I can, but if you're going to go down to that depth, pour a concrete wall, it's not just like your house where there's 8 feet or 8 inches or so, 10 inches behind in front of the wall for your footer, right? It's going to be massive. It's going to be feet in front. It's going to be many feet behind it, right? Or the opposite. Then you cut the ground out behind it from that. So if I got a wall here and my footer's way out there, way down in the ground below what would be a block wall sits just barely below the earth's surface. Okay, it's a gravity wall. Whereas the poured wall structurally, its integrity, it's going down below frost, attaching to a huge footer. Okay, it's a much bigger excavation. It does involve rebar, which is very expensive, and poured concrete, which it's a much more expensive wall.
So how are concrete blocks kept from shifting if you're not going below a frost line?
Well,
Through a frost heave, right?
So they're a gravity wall. Like they can move technically a little bit, right? They have drainage. They can drain right between the blocks. It's a different environment. And I'll let Jacob really explain that if he wants to, but it's two different beasts.
I just know that when you get a precast block wall and you get ice that expands in between the wall, it shifts the blocks. That force of that water freezing is tremendous.
Yeah, no, we do embed these. And there is drainage behind it, just like you would a cast in place concrete wall. But yeah, generally what, of course, we're saying about like the width of the excavation is going to be a lot less. We haven't looked at the width of the footing needed for a cast in place concrete wall, but it would certainly be, I would say, wider than what you're going to have for the block wall. Block walls are also a lot more forgiving. They can take movement and still be safe and structurally sound, whereas movement on a cast in place concrete wall is usually definite. So you start to get kind of cracking, issues like that. They're both really dependent on good drainage being put in place, but I would say even more so for the cast in place wall. If the drainage fails, your walls are not in place. You have a little bit of forgiveness in the block wall, but more so in the top.
So it sounded at one point that number 4 was the recommended, because there is no number 6 that I can see on this chart, right?
Wow.
So can we just give the go ahead to you guys to, yeah, I mean, unless you're like, the better option is we make a 6 that has this and this.
Now,
Like, if you can articulate that and give us the cost, we would look at it.
6 would be the sheet pylon over by Bugby and the block toe wall over by 24 Maplewood. We've eliminated that tonight, I believe.
Well, can we get the 2 engineers' opinion on that?
I think it comes down to, again, your comfort and, well, and aesthetics, as well as longevity. I mean, as it's pointed out, I think the steel would last a very, very long time. Or more than likely, the concrete will last longer. It comes with a premium, but it also comes with the added aesthetics that, block walls, you can pick one that, looks nice as opposed to the sheet piling. It's going to be, 10 feet tall, and you put some shrubs or something in front of it or look at it. So
what would be the cost differential, you think?
I think it was only like $100,000 or $200,000 less.
I see.
To do that, 1A as the steel and then 1B as the
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think what Chris is saying, option 6 would be option 2 for wall 1A and option 4 for wall 1B. Combination, roughly.
What does a go ahead from us mean on this?
It means I think they're going to finish.
But it means we're going to keep moving forward. Like we veered off a little bit through the study of what was considered originally. We're pretty much back there, but we're making sure that everyone's on board. Sometimes in the past, if we make these decisions on our own and people don't agree with it, then they're like, why didn't you update us? We're here to update you and make sure we're all on the same page.
There's no form of a motion or anything on this stuff.
No, but we got to sort of give guidance on which one of these. So it sounds like if there was an option 6, it would be a little less expensive, but aesthetically option 4 with the stone can look nicer.
Can.
Okay. What do we think? Sound
Sounds
okay if we move forward with 4?
Yes.
Everyone nodding their head. Dan?
Has the 4 fingers.
Dan's giving the thumbs up. Okay, that's what we will do then. Thanks, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. Yep.
South Campbell, White River Junction. Just looking at the number there, I recall years ago that there was a number of 8 to 10 million that had been floated around for this project. I'm wondering what costs aren't shown here. you mentioned legal before, you mentioned some further engineering process. Is the actual construction of the road and the sidewalk itself?
No,
It's not in
this,
there.
this is
That's
just the wall
There's a
cost.
significant more.
Oh, yes, correct, there is.
And that's pending.
It's
Kim asked about
pen-
the bond
pending
for
this,
March.
yeah, it's pending this decision to finalize the plan to create that estimate, which would then be provided for the bond vote in March.
Okay, thank you very much.
Dave Briggs, White River Junction. I'm very reassured tonight by Chris's comments reporting that this would be a 16-foot traveled way section. And just to help you put that in perspective, we spent a lot of time in the neighborhood, my background in civil engineering, to talk about what kind of a section works and doesn't work if we would ever get down the road, or I would personally strive for, to two-way traffic. And just to put it in perspective, if you go to the top of Hillcrest Terrace all the way to the end before you drop down onto the far end of Fairview Terrace, that section of road that comes up there has no guardrail, very steep, treacherous slope on the side that we've all coped with since I was a kid. And that section is 15 feet wide. And we have directed all the traffic onto that street over these years, waiting for this resolution, anticipating that it would be always two-way, all weather, all year long. So the notion that we would end up with a 16-foot wide section gives us a fighting chance down the way to win that argument back and still have a two-way option. So I'm very reassured by that. In fact, if you can get it to be 16.6, go for it.
Thank you, Dave. Okay, we're going to move on to our next agenda item. This is the VLCT annual meeting voting delegate. So there's an annual meeting in September at 1 p.m. at the South Burlington Hilton. So we just have to appoint a voting delegate. It can be a select board member or other town official. Joe, did you want to talk on this one?
Well, I'm coming out to put my name in the hat for that on the board of VLCT. Basically, it is pretty much a ceremonial situation. Right now, it is voting for board members on VLTC. It is voting for the minutes of last year's town and any municipality issues that they have. Right now, there are none that are going for town fair, but and if they are, I would notify all of you of that and what your opinion would be for me to vote in the best interest of our.
So it's like a one-time annual. This is just like
exactly
for the purpose of going to this meeting.
Exactly.
Okay. Lanny?
Yeah, I'd also expressed interest in this. I would be interested to go up. I mean, as Joe said, there's not a whole lot to this. It's a ceremonial thing. I think it could be a good way for me to get into see a lot of what's happening in the towns and cities of Vermont at a very low level. And I'm sure you guys would be glad to know without causing any harm. So I would also throw my hat in the ring for this. I think it'd be very educational as well as informative for me. So yeah, I mean, I'm not going to fight Joe for it. So
what does the meeting entail? Do you know? Have you been to one before? Just
yes.
So we have a better sense.
Joe's actually on the board. Are you still on the board?
Yes.
Yeah.
So the meeting, there are breakout sessions throughout, but the fair itself is, like I said, you're going to find out what's going on in the state. You're also going to, if there are anyone that's going to be appointed to the board, like I said before, you would vote on that. That's really it. It's more of a symposium. The entire town fair is more of a symposium than anything.
Is it open to the public?
No.
Okay.
you as elected officials can go.
Okay.
So
So elected officials go, but this would just be for the person who goes to be able to cast a vote.
That is
when they're
correct.
voting for-
That is correct.
Okay.
Generally, there is a cost. Town generally fits the bill for select board members, but you have to figure that out for yourself. As a member of the board, I get to go for it.
As a member of the board, or you would still have to be appointed as a voting member for this particular purpose?
Yes, yeah, one has nothing to do
With
with
the
the
other.
other. If my term was up, then I would either recuse myself or not, not be, on the board.
How much impact does a vote at this meeting have?
Lenny, I can speak to this as well. I attended last year. Like Joe, so VLCT, the Vermont League for Cities and Towns, is a nonprofit that has a governing board of which Joe is a member. But the actual voting session, I mean, there's a big hall. They all present. The executive director presents, Ted Brady. The finance director will present, and then there'll be sort of like special programming. Then there is sort of a period during which the members, which are the communities, Hartford being one, have to then approve the minutes. But it's like a big hall, and they'll say, does anyone have any questions? Does anyone have any concerns? And then if not, then we're going to go to a vote, the yays and nays, and that's basically it. So it's a big hall. I was not representing Hartford. I just was there as an attendee, so I didn't get to vote in that period, but I still could ask questions if I wanted, participate how I wanted, and then attend the other sessions that they have. So it really is, I mean, I think if there were any concerns that Hartford had specifically about the minutes or any ballot items, which I don't know of, but if there were anything that were on our radar that we felt really strongly about, then I think it would be important that we really be judicious about who we send to go advocate for us. But I think in this case, it's going to be much more of a ceremonial.
Is there a bar?
A bar?
Yeah.
Oh,
Like when you go
to drink?
they provide,
To
like,
drink?
refreshments?
There is a bar. I think it's
Lawyer bar.
it's
Well,
a
that-
cash bar.
That speaks to true professionalism. Yeah.
I think there.
Want to know if there's a bar there.
Yeah, you want to go back on?
I'm sure there is somewhere now.
There's a, yeah, right. There's a cash bar. I think.
All right, so what do we want to do here?
Joe, if it's not too hurtful to you, I would not mind supporting Lanny's endeavor to go. I mean, Joe's on the board there, and I think it would be fun, great experience for Lanny to be able to represent our community.
And that said, I would agree with that as well. And forgive me, Lenny, I should have, I would have absolutely conferred with you beforehand and not from my head. That was something that you want to do. If it is, and the select board decides that they want to send you out, forward you the link, because you get to go through that.
I would like to do this.
Okay, I'll take a motion if you guys are okay with that.
Kim,
I
that's
mean,
right.
I'm glad you came to an amicable decision. Kim?
Yeah, I just want to chime in and thank both Lanny and Joe for volunteering to be that delegate, because I was a little worried that we weren't going to have anyone step up. So I fully support that. And I do, having attended different parts of town fair, I wasn't there for that voting part, but did definitely sit on some workshops at town fair. I do encourage any select board members that can attend to do so in whatever capacity that you can. And I'll be happy to nominate Lanny Collins as the delegate for VLCT as a motion.
A second from Alan? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
You got ayes? Yep, unanimous. All right, thanks, Lanny.
Joe, you addressed most handsomely.
Did Dan
So thank you
vote?
Yeah.
Yes.
I had a Rotary meeting upstairs.
Thank you, Joe. I'm glad we didn't have to arm wrestle for it.
Thank you, Joe.
Thanks, Joe. So our next item
send me
is
the link.
the community safety review RFP results. This tonight is more of just sort of an announcement that we did get a number of responses. If you go to our website, which is working much better now, in the document center, under select board and select board meeting documents, you can see all the proposals. I think there's like 190 pages worth. So we're gonna certainly, as a board, review all those and take some time before we decide quite what to do. But I would encourage everyone to look at the RFPs and we can start thinking about it. Certainly, it's not something we're gonna do, like next week, I imagine. So take a look on all those. They're very interesting. But I did think it might be useful if Gail gave us kind of an overview of the RFP process or things we should keep in mind or what we need to do to do this successfully, whether there are timelines you recommend or.
Yeah, so definitely this is a very important process and not one to be taken lightly or rushed through. And so I certainly would recommend, at a very minimum tonight, you as a board decide on a timeline. You need to hold yourselves accountable to make sure that you're following through on what you need to do. So your timeline should include the review, include the review of it, of all of the proposals, and that means doing it at home. And it is a lot of information. Reviewing them at home and then coming back here as a group and reviewing it. I don't believe that you'll be able to do it in one session unless you have a special meeting to do it. Also, you need to decide tonight what you're going to use for a scoring process. What is it that the board wants to get out of these proposals that were provided? And then also in your timeline is the selection of it. How long are you going to take before you make your decision on who you're going to select? And then the last part of it is execution. Doing your selection, having it executed, and then obviously once everything is executed, you need to come back together with the results that you have and what do you have for an action plan to follow through with any recommendations that you have. So again, tonight, as Mike said, I don't think, going through them individually, that's not going to work, but I strongly recommend that you have a timeline in place that you all can agree upon and you're going to hold yourselves accountable for, which means not showing up to a meeting and saying, no, I didn't have time to look at it, because that's not being a team player. It's not fair to other board members or the community.
Is there a standard like scoring process or like sheet? I mean, I know this maybe is a little different than.
Depending on what certain RFPs have, scoring, but those usually are done, you set it before. So they're specific per RFP. So you want to decide on what is important. What do you want to get out of that? What are you using?
Yeah, you have to set up your own scoring matrix.
Yeah.
Right.
Based on the characteristics of the individual.
What
we asked for.
Yeah.
Correct.
Meets the criteria.
Correct.
Yeah.
So your scoring is based on what you want to get out of the proposals.
Yeah.
And that has to be done now, so you know how to score them.
Yeah. Kim, do you have your hand up?
Yeah. And so I guess we'll have to figure out how to do that scoring. But Gail, is it pretty much standard procedure with proposals received from an RFP that we take it at face value? Like, say if board members had questions about specific methodology or how something applies, like we can't go back to the consultants and say, can you clarify this or could you elaborate on this or anything? Could we?
You can do that, but you need to pose the question to everybody, every entity that submitted a proposal. So if you have one for entity A and you need to send it to A, B, C, D, and E. So they're all given the same opportunity to give feedback.
Okay, that's helpful. Thanks.
I have a scoring matrix that I can send out to the board, like a sample, and I can send out.
Yeah, because I feel like we'll have to look at the RFP too. Again, I don't have it sort of on the top of my head, but we'll have to look at what we were asking for. Because I know we did put quite a number of like metrics and requests in there.
Yeah.
And just looking at that, and deciding, how are we going to score it based on what we want, right? I mean, I think that's part of it.
We just have to, it's pretty easy to do a scoring matrix. You just have to assign what weight you want to each category and set out the criteria for the categories.
Okay.
But
You
that's,
want to send one out to us?
I can do that.
Yeah. So let's have Lanny send one out to us. Let's look at the RFP, see if we can come up with our scoring matrix. Other thoughts?
Well, in
Ally?
terms of timeline, my question is, and I want to look through, I did a first pass of the RFPs this weekend, but if there's any deadline in terms of when we need to have responded, like do any of them, the offers, you know, sort of expire by, is it 30 days probably? So I would imagine if that, is that right, 30 days?
Several of them are October 7th, which is really a 60-day window.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, that's
Thank
actually
you.
helpful.
Thank you. Yeah,
Um,
just from a timeline, because I think if we at least know when we would like to have a decision made, we can work backwards from there.
Yep.
Um,
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. So I was here for the strategic plan process, so I just want to ask a couple of questions, because when you're working back on that timeline, like, do you plan on, and I don't know, Gail, if this is allowed, because we only had 3, so we did 3 interviews. Can you eliminate and then interview like you would with job candidates, or if you hold presentations, you hold all 6?
All 6 proposals need to be given the same.
Okay, that was just curious, because the interview process was really helpful. Like everybody get an hour to pitch, but like, I don't know that you'd want all 6 of them to pitch based on, I mean, at least my first blush, but I'm not a decider. But think about that too. So like bringing people in, if that's something that you wanted to do, that would also factor into your timeline. It could vary significantly. And there should be somewhere in historical documentation, the matrix used for that selection process, which might be similar enough to be a nice starting place.
Okay, good. Thank you. Anyone else have thoughts on this? So it sounds like Lanny's going to send us out a scoring sheet.
Yeah.
We should look at the RFP originally, and we should start reviewing it. It doesn't sound like there's any reason for us not to start reviewing them as well as we can. You know, we have a meeting in 2 weeks. It seems, I don't know, do people think that's a reasonable time to review?
Well, your deadline, if it's October 7th, you need to work back from there and count how many meetings that we're going to have. And if, you know, we don't have a lot of meetings between now and then, so it certainly may mean the board committing to having a special meeting to specifically review this information. So, you know, I definitely, before you leave here tonight, I would have your timeline, because otherwise we're already going to be at the end. You know, the next time we come together, we're going to be, it's September. So.
Kim has her hand in the night.
Kim?
Yeah, that was another question I had. I'm just looking at when our next workshop is and thinking maybe we can tack on a special meeting to that, but I haven't found that date yet. So this is something that can be just deliberated in public session, is that correct? Like we can just discuss the pros and cons and concerns and thoughts that we have about these organizations in public session, or is this something that would require executive session?
No, it definitely can be done in public session. It's no different when we're doing bid openings and anything in the town manager's office. The individuals who submit or entities that submit it are there, but also it's open to the public.
Great, awesome, thank you.
So without any special meetings, it looks like we've got meetings September 5th, 19th, and October 3rd. So if our deadline is the 7th, which is a Saturday, so we may want to check that, then we would have to make a decision, right, by the 3rd. Which means, so, I mean, you know, we can always do the special meetings, but, you know, I think by, right, like, so we'll work back, what would be the step before, you know, deciding on, if that's our October 3rd meeting, you know, what do we need to have done on the 19th of September? Rocket?
I would propose that in 2 weeks' time, we just have a time-limited 15-minute conversation, having all read it, and then we can go from there. If there's a clear favorite amongst everyone, then that gives us good direction. And if we need to sort of figure out adjusting our rubric or winnowing it down, then it gives us a little time.
Ally?
I know this would add to the timeline, but I do really like the idea of hearing from everyone, even if it's, 15, 20 minutes of, presentation, or if it's solely questions that we have. Because I think it's hard to, and a lot of these proposals are very detailed and comprehensive, but in case, members of the community have questions to ask too, this is a huge process. And so I think we want to make sure we do it right. So if there are at least one engagement opportunity for folks in our community also to be a part of, so it's not just, yes, we do make the final call, like this is ours to hold, but if we can embed that somewhere between now and when we need to make a decision, I think that would be very valuable.
How many more training sessions do we have? So I know that we've been doing that on the sort of the off meeting Tuesday. Those.
We have August 29th and September 6th.
Okay. I'm just thinking, without that on the schedule, then we've got that Tuesday, right? And you could do the regular meeting, and then the next Tuesday we do some sort of, meeting to discuss the RFP, give a chance for people to weigh in, things like that.
So September 12th, are you saying potentially for that?
I would say that could be a possibility. Yep. Look, if we really want to get it done, we'll just, we might have to be here a little bit more than we want to be. It is a tight timeline, and the fact is we've just got to get through it,
I just sent the matrix, just
Oh,
one
thanks,
of
Brian.
just one of many that can be used.
Because I think if we have some kind of, engagement, meeting on the 12th or the 19th, like if we want to, and then we have the matrix finalized as well, and then we can actually score it in the weeks leading up to the 3rd. 2 weeks to hopefully, or more than 2 weeks to hopefully gather all of the consultants to, hopefully they're available,
Yeah. So if by our next meeting, right, so September 5th, we'd all reviewed everything and we'd come up with our matrix, right? Then that leaves us some opportunities, for maybe a meeting on those off Tuesdays to bring people in and to discuss with the idea that, basically on the 26th, if needed, the 3rd of October.
If nothing more, it seems like we should be able to come up with our weighting criteria and our weighted values for that criteria, so we can put the matrix to work. So.
So let's commit to next meeting. We've got our matrix in place. So you sent that out, Lanny, and people can kind of, offline take a look.
Come up with ideas of what you want your criteria to be that you're going to weigh it on. And if you guys send it to me, I'll compile it and come up with, make the matrix up in Excel, and then we can do weights for it. I'll handle making the matrix, and everybody else can share their.
By what date, Lenny, would it be helpful to have all those comments from us so that you could work it into?
Thursday before the meeting.
So it's Thursday, the 28th?
Yeah, that'd be nice.
Or nope, 31st.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay.
I'll just compile them and I'll put them in together, matrix. But I have to have your weighting, how much. It's important to know what the weighting is you feel on it. So.
Okay. Kim.
So we'll do that.
Kim
and
has
then,
her hand up
oh yeah,
again.
Kim.
Yeah, sorry. I'm just wondering if one universal question that we could ask all consultants is if they would potentially extend their proposals for an additional month deadline. Like, I think a lot of these were submitted the beginning of August. And so, we lost a couple weeks of even being able to review them. So we could just do a blanket to each consultant, ask if we could have an extension until even like October 31st or something like that.
Yeah, if they're willing, if it's within the rules to do that, that seems reasonable. So why don't we go ahead, Kim.
I'd be happy to do that if that's not a staff thing. I'd be happy to take that responsibility unless it's more appropriate for staff to do.
So Kim is correct. The RFPs did come in on August 7th. I did send out a list to all of you, and nobody on the board asked for a copy of it. So I apologize if you're just getting them in this board packet had I been asked for them. And then as far as extension goes, because the RFP was addressed to me, I think it's appropriate for me to send the request out to everybody.
That would be amazing if you don't mind. Okay.
yeah, if we could get it just to like the end of October, I think that would be fine. I mean,
So would that be a first step to see if we could get an extension, and then depending on that, land on what date we would invite folks to come in for a meeting?
I think so.
Okay,
Yeah.
just wanted to check.
I do think by our next meeting, we should have all reviewed the proposals and we should have a matrix for scoring them back then. So that seems like a step we can all take. If we do get an extension, then we can figure out, when we want to have a sort of a public hearing, things like that. We may not need to schedule like special meetings in between meeting weeks if we do that, but we'll need to see what the response is to that. Sarah, do you have?
Sorry, I didn't say my name last time, but Sarah Campbell, White River Region. Our next HCOREI meeting is on the 6th, so it's a meeting after this next one that you're talking about. But I've already received a lot of SWOT responses from people in our group.
Okay.
So if that information is helpful, we would not be able to discuss it until the 6th, because that would be our next meeting. But we would be happy to bring that as well, just from the perspective that we have. It's SWOT is strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats.
Okay.
I know I use jargon. But anyway, that is definitely on our agenda and a topic that we were planning on discussing now that we have the RFPs in hand.
Okay, thanks. Okay, we're good with our plan, which was by next meeting, we've reviewed all the proposals and we've got our rubric, or
To me,
whatever we're calling
yeah,
it.
make sure you get them to me by the 31st.
And we'll see if we get an extension to the 31st, then even better. If not, we're gonna have some special meetings, which is fine. We can do that. Okay,
Okay, sounds good.
all right. So, you good?
Oh, I was just saying
Oh,
thanks,
yeah.
Lanny, for doing that.
I just sent out just a reminder to everybody.
Thank you.
Great. All right, town manager search update. I think we all know we have made our decision. John will start on October 2nd. So thanks again to everybody. Okay, we have an executive session. I don't think it's going to take all that long, but let's go into it if I get a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move that because we are conducting a search for a town manager, that we enter executive session to discuss employment of a public officer employee pursuant to Title I, Section 313A3.
I'll second the motion.
Second from Mary. Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, yes, we'll be in executive session.
Mr. Chairman, make a motion to come out of executive session.
Okay. We have a motion from Lanny to come out of executive session and a second by Mary. All those in favor say aye.
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 Okay, so 601, we're back and we're out of executive session. We have nothing to, no formal action to take. Commission reports, Lanny?
I have nothing.
Hallie?
None for me.
Mary?
Yeah, Hartford Parks and Rec. I'll be totally honest with you. I know there's a vacancy. Scott told me at one time there were 2 vacancies, but I see it listed as 1 vacancy, but so. Citizen comments included a request for bocce ball for a court layout at Maxfield or Frost Park for the community. This would not involve anything other than some kind of plastic thing. It's not, you know.
The bocce's great.
Yeah, I've
I
played
encourage
before.
that we get a bocce.
I'm gonna be on record that Mike supports bocce.
And Director Hostler reported that most of the parks were not badly affected by the flooding. Only Queechee Falls Park was affected negatively, primarily with the fencing ripped away, lighting fixtures and bark mulch. And Springfield Fence, hopefully by now, would be out to replace the fencing. Silt and debris has made for labor-intensive work to clean up, particularly at the Watson Dog Park. And discussion ensued regarding playground updates. Lyman and Maxfield parks are the most used, and concerns over accessibility, like wheelchair accessibility, ADA, to playgrounds is now being considered. The Hurricane Trail Run moved to August 26th as a result of the flooding. That's this weekend. Discussion also centered around a Vermont State Building Communities grant for activities and structures.
Thank you, Mary. Dan? Nothing, Kim?
I do not have a commission report, but it occurred to me that I neglected to say one thing during SIGACs and select board comments, which is that Lisa O'Neill's description of the cannabis control, the local cannabis control commission was super helpful. And I just wanted to appreciate her taking the time to really lay that out for us and make it much clearer, even though it's still a little ambiguous. So that's all.
Thanks, Kim. I don't have anything, so we can go to the consent agenda.
Dan's gonna do that?
Dan, you gonna do that, or you want one of us? No, okay. So Ally?
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve payroll ending 8/19/2023, approve the meeting minutes of 8/8, 8/9, 8/11, and 8/15, 2023, approve the AP manifest of 8/18, 2023, and 8/24, 2023. We have select board meetings already approved of 9/5 and 9/19, 2023.
Second?
I'll second the motion.
Okay,
Chairman,
all those.
Discussion.
Opposed?
Discussion. Can I?
Yeah, discussion, go ahead.
Do we need to? We don't have to warn our workshops. Okay.
No.
Sorry, my bad.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Motion made by Ally, second by Mary. All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Make a motion to adjourn.
So, yep, 601. Now I will take a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second the motion.
Dan was seconding. He was the same.
Oh,
I'm sorry, Dan, I'm not catching you
Okay,
fast enough.
before we drive Lana crazy, we had a motion to adjourn from Lanny. We had a second from Dan. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. 601.
Bye.
All right, thanks.